So speaking of other hot beverages,
Hmm.
Earl Grey, hot.
That sounds good right now, actually.
Well, I am making, of course, a Star Trek reference
Oh,
to Star Trek The Next Generation, in which Captain Picard frequently drinks Earl Grey tea.
Hmm.
Because we actually saw another movie this week in addition to Jason Bourne. We saw
Yes.
Star Trek Beyond. What did you think of Star Trek Beyond, Paul?
I think in this case you probably liked it more than I did.
For once
For once.
on this podcast.
Oh, we've only had 4. This is our 4th one.
Well, this is the 5th movie we're talking about, and then actually I might break this off depending on how long we go on Star Trek. This might be a mini episode. We'll see.
Oh dear.
But Star Trek Beyond was another movie we saw that I now wish we would have done episode 4 on instead of Jason Bourne, because Jason Bourne was
Bored.
Well, on the other hand, it was fun doing Jason Bourne because I got to rip it apart, and I like
Let's
ripping
call this
movies
movie
apart.
Jason is bored.
Yeah, Jason is bored.
He doesn't
like
know
it.
what to do.
Yeah.
But
Or
yeah,
we could call it Jason Beyond.
I mean, so Star Trek, the biggest things after watching that, I liked the movie. It was good. I felt that, especially at the beginning, a lot of the dialogue was contrived. A lot of it felt like let me say exactly what I'm thinking.
A little bit.
Some of it felt kind of fake. At the same time, it felt very fun. It felt a lot more like a TV episode. A lot more adventurous, which I guess is very befitting for a 3rd movie, in a trilogy. It was very fun. I like to see a huge aspect of this movie was I was so happy to see was that James Kirk was actually more fitting for a captain. Like his character he had actually matured. Hallelujah. That's one thing.
Who would have thought?
That's one thing I absolutely hated about Iron Man 2 is that he went through the same character arc as he did in Iron Man 1.
And also going back to this franchise, Into Darkness, James Kirk had the same character arc basically that he had in the first Star Trek.
He had the same. Yeah, I was glad to see that he had matured. There wasn't any scene with him sleeping around with any alien person, and then
he has more trouble getting away with that now that he's officially the captain of the ship.
Yeah, and so I love to see the development of those characters. I really had issues with the villain in this movie, and well, maybe I shouldn't say that. But he could have been a lot more evil. Like for some reason, he was really nice towards what's Spock's girlfriend? What's her name?
Uhura.
Uhura. Yeah. Who? 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 Anyways.
You gave your girlfriend a tracking device?
That was funny. I like those guys.
That was a good scene.
Spock and that character. Bones. I mean, he kind of gets away with some obvious dialogue, but that fits his character.
That is Bones' character.
Yeah.
Yes.
And anyways, Uhura some of her dialogue felt very contrived when she's speaking to the villain. Like she was like, "But why? Like, what is underneath? There's got to be something more. Like, why are you doing the things you do?" And I was like, "What is this? Like, I don't know what. I just." Is it
the screenwriters are like, see, this is a movie with depth. The villain has an underlying motivation.
Yes. And then he could have been a lot more evil. Like he didn't hurt the crew. The crew was captured. They're like, oh, he's so evil. He hurts people. But you never saw him do anything super evil. And then he was.
If you think about it,
and
if you think about it though, this is actually a relatively common thing to the Star Trek franchise. Because, the first villain in Star Trek 2009 was pretty evil. He was like, I will literally destroy an entire planet, and I want to destroy all of the planets in the Federation. I want to commit mass genocide, basically, is what that's what the villain's goal in the first Star Trek is he just wants to commit mass genocide against all of the Federation. And so he's pretty evil. So the first villain's really evil. But if you think about Khan's actually kind of less evil. Like he does some evil things. Like he has the bomb go off.
He has more. There's more to him than just purely being a villain. I guess.
Yeah, he had like a pretty good motivation. He's like, you Star Trek guys. If you think about it, Khan is actually almost completely justified in that movie, because yes, he kills like 30 whatever innocent people at that Star Trek facility, but also that's a Star Trek facility, or not a Star. Why do I keep calling it a Star Trek facility? Sorry, Starfleet facility. I apologize. He kills like 30 some people at that Starfleet facility, but his enemy is Starfleet. Like, that makes sense because the head of Starfleet, that admiral dude, or I'm not sure if he's the head, but, you know, one of the head guys, even if he's not the head, is, like, evil. And he's, like, imprisoning Khan and forcing him to do these things for him. And he's, you know, holding his crew hostage. And he's, like, threatening to kill them if Khan doesn't do the things he wants. So, like, as far as Khan is concerned, like, Starfleet is the enemy.
Yeah, I guess the enemy...
Like, so Khan is, like, perfectly justified in everything he does in that movie.
Right, so far,
basically.
all three villains for all three movies have all had, like, a problem with Starfleet. Like, they all have some backstory where Starfleet has somehow disappointed them significantly, and they want to get revenge on Starfleet.
Yeah, I enjoyed this villain, actually. Like, he wasn't great, but I liked the idea of him being a former captain. So Idris Elba plays the villain in this movie. Mm-hmm. He does a pretty good job playing the character, I think. Like, obviously he's kind of still a little stereotypical villainy, but you know, whatever. He does a good enough job playing him. Better than Nikki in the Bourne movie. Better than Blank Slate.
Yeah, Blank Slate. Yeah, Blank Slate and Jobs Jr.
Yeah, Jobs Jr. Maybe he wasn't quite as good as Jobs Jr. I don't know. Jobs Jr. is a pretty hard role to top, man. But
I feel like he just could have been more evil and more dynamic.
He was pretty evil. He wanted to kill everybody.
That's true. But like when you saw him up close in person, he was not that evil. I don't know.
Well, I guess it's interesting because, you know, he talks about he's a soldier and he fought for humanity, and he's like, I feel like we're weak now, that we don't know how to be strong anymore. He doesn't like this whole unity thing, which is a bit contrived. Like, why don't you like unity?
He's totally against. Even that's what his fleet totally depends on. By the way, another thing I was annoyed with is what was his army? What were they? Were they aliens? Were they humans?
They were drones. They were robotic.
Did he just make a whole bunch of robots in his spare time that he was stranded?
It is okay. That's like offhandedly
millions of little robots.
No. Okay, here is the offhand remark in which it is explained away where all this stuff comes from, and you could argue it's not sufficient. I don't think it's quite sufficient, but it does technically explain away. It's in his captain's log towards the end of the movie when they're on his ship. And there's a captain's log that they watch, and it's him, Idris Elba, before he turns all creepy because he's like sucking the life force out of other organisms in order to keep himself alive. In that captain's log, it explains kind of why he's still alive, because he says this planet has some sort of technology that increases your longevity. So it's explained why he's able to stay alive. Which, that is kind of contrived, but that's also very Star Trek, that they would just, like, throw out a line of technobabble and be like, oh, that's why this is happening, because of the energy transfer device. Yeah, because science. Or, like, Futurama, I didn't say science, I said seance. But, yeah, but the, anyway, so it's thrown out that he has the energy transfer device to keep himself alive, and then he also says this planet has technology. It's been abandoned for a long time.
There's technology. There's people.
No, it's been abandoned for a long time. So there used to be a civilization there, but they left apparently, which is also very Star Trekky. Or they died out.
And they left all the brilliant technology behind.
Well, no, that's the other thing he mentions is he's like, there's a drone workforce
that he all convinced to work for him because he had money.
Well, they're robots, so as long as he figured out how to hack the computer,
like humanity, like we all die and all that's left is the robots that we created. They just keep building, like all those survived were like the military, robots, so they just kept on doing what they're programmed to do, building military things. Yeah,
there's actually quite a few elements in this movie that have sort of vaguely come from other elements of different Star Trek episodes and stuff, which is probably apparent. This is the most Star Trek-y. This movie, I enjoy, out of the 3 new Star Trek movies, this is the best in my opinion because it feels the most like Star Trek. Like the first two felt like, you know,
They
science fiction
they
action
changed
set pieces, which
directors for this third movie.
yeah, they did. This is Justin Lin instead of
Hmm.
J.J. Abrams. And J.J. Abrams, I feel like, did a very good job with Star Trek 2009. Into Darkness was not as good, in my opinion. It was still okay, but it wasn't as good. And then this movie, in my opinion, is very good. This one was directed by Justin Lin, and it was written by Simon Pegg and some other guy. And Simon Pegg actually plays Scotty in the movie.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Scotty, I believe. Simon Pegg is Scotty. Um, and so Simon Pegg wrote this movie along with one other screenwriter, and I think they did a in terms of making this movie like Star Trek, but not obviously like Star Trek. This
Hmm.
was great because like Into Darkness was basically recycling the plot of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. That's basically
Yeah.
what Into Darkness did. It was literally a remake of The Wrath of Khan. You know, even including the part where one of the two main characters has to go into the warp core at the end and sacrifice themselves to save the ship. In the original The Wrath of Khan, it's Spock who sacrifices himself, and in this movie, or not in this movie, but in Into
Hmm.
Darkness, it's Kirk, which is, you know, a little reversal there. Um, but this movie felt much more like it was paying homage to Star Trek, but without blatantly sort of ripping off what happened in the original older Star Treks. Because again, Wrath of Khan just felt like very similar. The beats were all very similar, as opposed to this movie, which is like it just felt
Hmm.
like Star Trek. It wasn't completely recycled, but like the villain was new, and the space station was new, and all this stuff was new. Like this was a new story, but it had elements in it that made it feel
Yeah,
very
definitely.
Star Trek. Where yeah, you know, it's an abandoned planet. That planet, by the way, that planet, I love that planet because it's literally like it's like every planet in Star Trek the original series where it's like there's
Yeah,
rocky
I reckon I saw
outcroppings
this
and
set like
there's
when Spock
caves.
and the other guy, I can't remember his name. They crashed. No,
Kirk or
Bones, whatever.
Bones or
When they're
yeah,
walking through and they
yeah,
see like the orange rock things, and I was like,
yeah,
wow, that
yeah.
looks totally like a Star
The,
Trek thing.
Yep. It felt like if in 1966 they had like a huge budget and advanced, you know, 2016 movie
Yes,
making technology, that's what the
definitely.
sets would have looked like,
Yeah.
which I loved. That was great to me. I love that there's a scene where Scotty is with what's her name? Jahara or
Yeah, that
Jar
the white slash black chick.
the white girl with the black
Yeah.
stripes on her face who's actually like strangely hot. I don't know.
The black actor that's white.
The
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, her whatever. She she's like fighting some people and he grabs a rock to fight with. And that felt very much like the original series, like, oh, let me just grab this rock to beat somebody over the head with. Like, I'm just gonna grab a rock off of the nearby rock. I'm gonna grab a rock off of the bigger rock. You know, that felt very Star Trek to me. There were a lot of little things like that where they were like
Uh-huh.
subtle, but like kind of reminiscent, and it was nice to have that in the movie. Um, there were a lot of little nods and homages like that that were in my opinion, very well done. Like they were not beating you over the head, but like, oh,
Yeah.
that's kind of fun. They
Uh-huh.
did that in the original, but not exactly the same, but just similar. And then there's the scene where basically the plot of this movie, to go over that, is so Kirk. It starts out and Kirk is it's about to be Kirk's birthday, which I feel like has been in a couple episodes because Kirk kind of always that yeah actually that's been in a few Star Trek movies and episodes where it's like, oh, it's Kirk's birthday and he feels old. Of course in this movie he's doesn't feel too old because he's like 30 or whatever, like he's
Yeah.
pretty young in this movie still, but he's kind of depressed.
Yeah,
He's
the
not
movie was
sure.
set up very well.
He's
I mean,
kind of
it was obvious setting up dialogue. They just went with the easy, like, let's just have someone narrate what's basically going on. But it
yeah,
was set
but
up very well.
it also felt it felt pretty good too. Like it didn't feel entirely beating you over the head. Like it felt like I actually felt like in the conversation with Bones and Kirk with the alcohol that they stole from Chekhov. I felt like that actually seemed like a genuine conversation between two friends,
Okay.
in my opinion. Like two good
Mhm.
friends to me personally. I don't know. Maybe it was a bit over the head, but like it was not. It did not annoy me. of course, this is again me being a very big Star Trek fan, so keep in mind my bias here. Um, so the scene, it opens, and Kirk is kind of questioning whether he wants to continue being the captain. He's like, the frontier just goes on and on forever. I'm not sure what the point of us being out here is. He's kind of lost the touch with like what it means to be a captain, what it
We were
means to be
really
part of
really like
Starfleet.
reversed in this talking about Star Trek, because usually I'm the one like, yeah, this is the theme and this is how it's reflected. Now it's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, this is really is a break from our normal
Yeah.
style, where I'm the one who's talking about how great this movie is, and you're a bit more reluctant. But so anyway, so James T. Kirk is like, hey, I'm not sure if I want to keep doing this, and he's talking with Bones, and he's depressed because he's like, I'm gonna be turning a year older, and Bones like, yeah, that's how birthdays work, and he's like, no, I'll be 1 year older than my father was when he died, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, and now you
Yeah.
kind of understand like why that would be an emotional moment for someone, like, and then they so Kirk's not sure about staying in Starfleet, and he doesn't know what it means to be a captain anymore, and he's lost touch with the mission. Spock is not sure if he wants to be in Starfleet because he's like, oh, it's not logical. I need to go create more Vulcans, make little Vulcans. And I liked that because it kind of made sense in the plot that he might want to, leave to repopulate a species. And really, they're the ones with the main arcs in this movie, which is nice because it's kind of advanced along from where they were in Into Darkness. Because Into Darkness, they were basically the same as they were in Star Trek 2009. So it's nice to see some real character advancement. So then they go to the station, and the station is awesome. Like, at first I was a little bit thrown off by it. Like, at first I didn't like it because I was like, this is
like
so
Halo with the giant
impractical.
rings spinning around.
Yeah, and at first I was kind of put off by the fact that the station is super impractical, but then I was like, you know what? I actually like this because this is what I would expect from the Star Trek civilization. Like, if you have a federation of planets and it's a post-scarcity, post-poverty, post-war society, like, I would expect them to build these gigantic things in space, and like a giant city in space that would be a huge undertaking, and that we would think of it as like, oh, that's impossible. You couldn't possibly build something like that. And it's like, no. Like, we have the technology and the resources and the time, like, and we've already solved all of our other problems on Earth and all of these other planets. Like, so we can build a giant city in outer space. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that, like, this is establishing, like, this is the Federation. We are awesome. Like, that's basically
That's what it has in
what it
neon
felt
lights
like
on the
me.
station for everyone just doing all different languages.
Yeah, exactly. So they're hanging out on the station. Spock finds out that older Spock has died, which is an emotional moment for him, which is, of course, paying tribute to Leonard Nimoy passing away last year. I thought that was very well done because, it's nice to make reference to it because obviously Leonard Nimoy has been a huge part of this franchise, and so it was nice to pay tribute to him in this movie. But they also did it in an appropriate way where they didn't go over the top with it. They didn't have like some CGI Leonard Nimoy get killed by the bad guy. They're just like, you know what, he was an old Vulcan and he passed away, and they give Spock the little holographic picture type thing, and they're like, here, we're really sorry about the news. And he just looks at it, and it's like, Leonard Nimoy, aka Spock, the old guy. And it's like he lived from this time to this time, and young Spock is kind of sad, and it furthers along his conviction that maybe he should, go to repopulate Vulcan instead of being in Starfleet. And then they get a distress signal, basically not a distress signal, but a escape pod comes in. And there's a lady, and she's like, oh, my ship crashed on this planet, and we need to go rescue them. And so they go through a nebula with the Enterprise to rescue the crew. They get to this planet, and they get attacked by a big swarm of drones that totally wrecks up the Enterprise, which the Enterprise is also destroyed in Star Trek 3. The original Star Trek 3, so it is a bit of a nod to that. I liked the destruction of the Enterprise in this movie. It was much more drawn out and felt like more of like the way it would happen. if like a giant swarm were attacking you, instead of just like, because in Star Trek 3 they self-destruct the Enterprise because it's like being captured by Klingons. And in this movie they go through and the ship's being sort of gradually destroyed, and they separate the saucer section, which is a thing from the Next Generation, and I can't remember if the saucer section could actually separate in the original Star Trek or not. It's something that they could do in the Next Generation, but the Next Generation is a newer Enterprise than this Enterprise, so whatever, it's kind of different, but it's kind of nice. They separate the saucer section as the ship's engines are getting destroyed, and then everything's slowly kind of gradually being incrementally destroyed, and everybody's in their escape pods, and as the escape pods are flying out, the drones are catching the escape pods and taking them back to the planet and taking them prisoner. And then the saucer section crashes, and the only people who manage to like not get taken prisoner are Bones, Spock, Scotty, or not Scotty. Yeah. Or yeah, Scotty does not get taken prisoner, right? Scotty escapes because he like loads himself into a proton torpedo, which I thought was a nice thing, because it's like, oh, he figured out how to do that because Into Darkness, the people are proton torpedoes or whatever. That's where he had the idea from. So that was kind of a nice thing to have Scotty do, was like hide in the proton torpedo, even though I feel like it would totally kill him, but whatever. So Scotty, Bones, Spock, Kirk, and Chekhov all managed to not get captured, as well as that one lady who was the one who came in the escape pod to tell them that her ship had crashed in the first place. Turns out the lady is evil the whole time and has been leading them into a trap, which is not too surprising, to be honest. And then basically they managed to evade capture. The rest of the crew has been captured, of course, though. So they have to team up with the Jayla, or whatever her name is. And they team up with her. She's been living in this old ship that is the bad guy's old ship that has been on this planet but been cloaked somewhere. And so they use that ship as well as a dirt bike that is on board for some reason to...
you see Chris Pratt just hops on, starts riding Velociraptor, start running with him.
Yeah, exactly. So they use the dirt bike and the ship's transporter to get all the crew to escape. Meanwhile, the bad guy is going to use a virus to attack the station. So the swarm attacks the station, and then meanwhile, Kirk is pursuing them using the old USS Franklin, which is the bad guy's old ship from when he was in Starfleet as a captain, and crashed on that planet a very long time ago. And they figure out that in order to disrupt the drones, because all the drones communicate...
And at this time, they'd rescued the whole crew as well that was captured.
Yeah. They rescued all the crew, which was nice. So then they're on the USS Franklin, which is this old, outdated ship, which is homage to the Star Trek Enterprise series, which is the most recent Star Trek TV series, which was a prequel that was it ran from like 2000 to 2004. And so that ship, the USS Franklin, is very similar to the old original USS Enterprise in Star Trek Enterprise, which is very nice. It's a bit of a homage, and they make some more homages. Like they talk about how the transporter in the ship was only meant for cargo, but with a bit of modification, they got it to, teleport people too, which is, again, from Star Trek Enterprise, where they're like, oh, look at these cool transporters we've invented. We're not sure if they're safe for people yet, but we use them to transport cargo.
It's like Galaxy Quest. It turned inside out, and it exploded.
And then it exploded. Yeah. They play the song Sabotage.
Yeah, that's another problem I had
the enemy.
with it was a cool idea how they had the radio playing. It was fun. I would say a little.
It was a really fun,
a little
scene,
impractical,
even
and
if
then
it didn't make the most
fact
sense.
that everything just like it's not like the radios are jammed until they begin crashing into each other. It's just like they just start exploding the enemy because like rock and roll is playing.
I felt like it was.
That's what it was supposed to be, but it just looked like by the rate of how quickly they were exploding.
It looked
like they were just like randomly like self-destructing. I mean, I don't wasn't, but the practicability that they would all just suddenly. Like the Enterprise is a pretty tiny ship compared to that huge swarm, and the fact that like they all just start exploding is, I just thought I'm like, okay, well it'd probably be like a really long. The radius of explosions around the Enterprise would probably be very small, and they'd have to move around the whole swarm to get rid of
Uh,
all of them. Just the fact that they all like died so
well, no,
quickly.
but they're all
No,
crashing
because
into each
the
other.
space station also started blurring the music.
Is also well, yeah, and they're shooting it back
Yeah,
at them
and so
too.
that would explain.
Um,
But just the fact that like the radius, they had to be. They explained how they had to be in really close contact with these alien ships to jam their signal, or whatever. And so
uh,
just the radius around the ship would have had to been pretty small. So like everyone would crash within a close radius, close to the ship. But then everyone else would be fine.
I think it would. Well, I think that it would have been bigger than that because I think it was just they had to get closer, but whatever. I think that within 100 kilometers or so
Whatever.
probably would have been fine. I don't know, especially once the space station started blaring it back. But
It was a
I
fun
mean, the
scene.
whole scene is. It was a fun scene. It was ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. Like it was a pretty crazy, kind of silly thing, but whatever. It was fun. It was enjoyable. And then the Idris Elba and a couple drones managed to get inside the station, and the Franklin follows him in, and then they have an action sequence where Kirk is jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper, which is kind of fun, and they're trying to make sure he doesn't use the virus and distribute it via the air filtration system on the station and kill all the people who are on the
Kill
station, where
all the
there's like
people.
literally, yeah, literally millions
Yes.
of people. And of course, Kirk saves the day. And in the process of doing all this, Spock realizes that he does actually want to stay in Starfleet, and he has feelings for Uhura, even though it might not be the most logical thing. And so, even though she's not a Vulcan, he wants to stay with her. And also, Kirk realizes that this is what it's all about. This is why he was the captain, and this is what Starfleet does and what it's about. And so he decides that he wants to stay in Starfleet too. It felt really mature,
Mm-hmm.
a maturing moment for him. And it was just generally a really fun movie. And it just felt very Star Trek. They open with a captain's log, which was fantastic. There's a lot of great little things in this movie, like the reversal of he's on a mission at the beginning where Kirk's trying to negotiate with the aliens, like negotiate a peace treaty, and you think they're these big aliens, and then they come running down, and you realize they're these tiny
Yeah.
little things. That's pretty great.
I
I
was,
love
I was
that.
like, oh, that's cute.
Um,
Haha, I get it. I wasn't like out bursting out laughing at that point. I don't know.
I mean, I wasn't bursting out laughing, but I thought it was
Okay,
a
yeah,
fun
that was
twist.
funny.
Like it
Yeah.
was, yeah. The captain's log again was a great way to open it. I love setting up everything. It worked pretty well, and again, it was very reminiscent of like Star Trek because like almost every episode of Star Trek basically opens with like captain's log, and the captain's log, he's like making his journal entry, and it kind of sets up what's going to happen.
I feel like that was,
And
I feel like
we
that was
see.
kind of a really obvious and quick. I don't know if it was cheap, but it was a very straightforward way to like this is what's happening.
It was very straightforward, but it's also the same thing that like Star Wars does, where it's like the opening
True.
crawl.
The op-
Like,
the
here's what's
opening
happening in the
credits.
movie. Here's
Yeah,
what
but
you need
that's
to
like
know.
something you
What?
expect. That's like a regularity, a
Well, but that's
reoccurring
something you like.
regularity that you need to see.
No, but that is a reoccurring regularity in Star Trek. The last two movies
Yeah,
haven't done it, but
that's why it
like,
kind of felt weird.
okay, well, I guess for me, having
Yeah,
being a fan
so
of the old
you will love
TV
this movie if
series,
you are a Trekkie,
if
and
you are a
also
Trekkie,
if you're
yes,
just
you will
taking a
love
good
this
action
movie.
movie, like something that's entertaining and pretty good, you will be greatly appeased by this movie.
Yeah,
But if you're not a Trekkie and are as skeptical as other Paul here, Paul Hein, then you might not like this movie so much. But this is the fact I feel like Paul that you are a Trekkie. Contributes a
yeah.
lot
I just like forgive this
because
movie
it's
because I
like
felt like it
the
did
things that feel
very
kind of
well.
like maybe would feel at least to me very contrived, very obvious, or straightforward, like something that could have been developed or explained more. Um, it's like that. It's kind of what the Star Trek, some of the older Star Trek episodes are like, and so for that
Yeah,
case, it
yeah.
is a good movie.
Yeah, definitely this movie really gave me hope though. It gave me hope that I was going to see more Star Trek cuz like the last two movies, Star Trek 2009 was pretty good. Star Trek Into Darkness was just kind of okay in my opinion. But like neither of them really felt like Star Trek to me. They just kind of felt like this is the Star Trek universe, but they're just kind of
Yeah,
these action
definitely.
movies in Star
It
Trek.
definitely did not feel like a straight up action
Um,
movie. But it will
yeah,
suffice as something
this,
that will happily. It's not an action movie, but it
but it
can.
can be
But
an
it can.
action
There's a lot
movie.
of good action scenes in this
Yeah,
movie. The ship being torn apart.
yeah, better than better
The
than
the, the
Jason
scene
Bourne.
where the saucer, the Enterprise is flipping over and they're on the inside running around. That was a good action scene. The motorcycle scene the rescue scene was a good scene. So there's a lot of good action
Yeah.
scenes, fun action scenes, not intense dark action
Mm-hmm.
scenes, but fun action scenes.
Yeah, they were. It was, in my opinion, this was a really fun movie, and it just kind of felt like this gave me hope because it was like Star
Yeah,
Trek's not
yeah.
dead. There's still
There's
Star
hope.
Trek is still alive, and they are planning on making a fourth one of these movies, and I'm hoping that one does well. I think it's already in production because, interestingly enough, Chris Hemsworth or whatever his name is, I think it's the younger Hemsworth. I can't remember his first name. Baby Thor.
Yeah.
Um, whatever.
I
Is it
don't
Jake
remember his first name
Hemsworth
either.
or something?
I know what you mean.
Whatever. He's the guy who played
Yeah.
Kirk's
Hmm.
father in Star Trek 2009, and he's apparently back. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it
Time
might be
travel.
interesting. Yeah, exactly. Time travel shenanigans. I but yeah, Star Trek. This movie felt like Star Trek, and I hope Star Trek can come back. And to be honest, there were a lot of little fun things in this movie. Like, I liked, at the end of the movie when they give little young Spock, older Spock's personal effects, and they've got the picture of the original crew from the alternate timeline,
Yeah,
and
they
I
had
thought that was
that.
kind of
Yeah.
a fun touch. I thought it was a nice way to pay homage without being like, because again, this is kind of a weird timeline situation where it's like, oh, this is an alternate timeline to the original Star Trek
Mhm.
series. So it's like, okay, we can have a picture of the original crew and not have it be super weird. Um, and the party at the end also was it was an interesting moment because so James Captain Kirk toasts to absent friends, which has happened a few times in other Star Trek movies and shows, I believe, where the captain will offer a toast to absent friends, and it's usually I think actually that's the end. I believe that's the end of Wrath of Khan after Spock is dead, and the rest of the crew are drinking, and Kirk offers a toast, and he's like to
Hmm.
absent friends, and he's making reference to Spock because in the original Star Trek, uh, Spock does not come back until the end of the third movie, as opposed to in Star Trek Into Darkness, where Kirk is dead for 5 minutes
Yeah.
basically.
Did you die? Sadly, yes. But yet I live.
But Kirk offers the toast to absent friends, and I don't know if it was CGI or if it just happened to be that's how they filmed it. I thought it was vaguely creepy, but also kind of nice. Like he offers the toast to absent friends, and then Anton Yelchin is center
Yeah, yeah, that's
frame
right.
in the shot immediately afterwards, which obviously that was a sad occurrence that Anton Yelchin passed away.
Hmm.
So that's unfortunate, and especially since it wasn't that he just passed. He obviously got
Mm.
killed by a vehicle, as opposed to Leonard Nimoy, who was just kind of
Yeah.
older, and so yeah. All in all, a lot of good I think in this movie. It wasn't perfect. I'm not gonna pretend that it was perfect, but this movie made me very happy, and I really loved it, and I will give it a wholehearted thumbs up for if you are a Trek fan or if you just want to have a fun
Yeah.
time. This is a movie that I
If you want to
highly
have a fun movie,
recommend.
I'll definitely recommend it. Hmm.
So, yeah, it gives me hope for the future of Star Trek. So, have you seen the Star Trek
I have
Discovery
not.
trailer? Okay, there was a teaser. It really does not tell us hardly anything about the show, but there was a teaser for the upcoming Star Trek
Huh.
Discovery TV show, and it looks pretty. It looks good. I mean, the CGI. A lot of people are complaining that the CGI ship in the trailer is not great. and I hope I hope that the actual show is better than that, but it also might not be, and I will be fine if it's not, because to be honest, it's okay. Like, and it's a TV show. Like, there's a difference between a TV show budget
Yep.
and movie budget. Like, that's
Firefly was
just
still
kind of the
good,
way it
and that
works.
that budget was not incredible.
Yeah, yeah, and like Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, like the CGI in that show was like, it was not that great, to be perfectly honest, but it still was a great show, despite the fact that the CGI was like kind of like
Mhm.
a video game. You know, it's like whatever, it works. Like if it's good enough in terms of its plot and characters and all that other stuff, like it really, the CGI is not going to
Mhm.
be that relevant. Um, so I don't know. Star Trek Discovery, of course, it might be terrible and it might fall flat on its face, but it gives me hope that since they had a pretty good hit with
Mhm.
this movie, in my opinion, in terms of capturing the spirit of Star Trek, I really hope that Star Trek Discovery does very well. Apparently, I have heard this. I have not heard it confirmed officially, but another thing that's interesting about Star Trek Discovery is it's going to be episodic, but not episodic as in like the whole series is not going to be about the
Huh.
same thing. So they're going to have like a season, and like season 1 will be about this story with this crew and this time period, and then season 2 will be about this other thing that's happening, which I feel like is good and bad. Because like it's good because it's like, wait, you can tell all sorts of interesting stories, but it's also bad because you won't be able to connect as deeply
Yeah.
with the crew of the ship, which is an important part
Mhm.
of Star Trek. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. But that I also, again, I just heard that. Um, I have not seen if that's officially confirmed or not. That was just something that I had heard someone say is officially confirmed, but I have not seen firsthand evidence that that
Mhm.
is true. So it'll be interesting to see exactly um, how Star Trek Discovery works. Maybe we'll do an episode about it when it comes out next year, if I can convince Paul to watch it, if he can forge through his technophobia of disliking
I
Star
don't
Trek or
dislike Star
whatever.
Trek. I just never. Yeah.
I'm just get I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
giving
Yeah.
you a hard time. It's okay. And maybe we'll do an episode about it. Maybe, I mean, we don't have to watch the whole thing obviously, but maybe we can do an episode
Yeah.
about the
Sure.
pilot or something. Um yeah, so hopefully it'll be good. We'll see. But yeah, I have high hopes for the future of Star Trek now, as opposed to before I saw this movie when I did not have particularly high hopes. Like when this movie's trailer
The
came out,
trailer
when the trailer for
definitely
Star Trek
felt
Beyond
like
came out,
it was just another one of the kind of Into Darkness type of feel.
yeah, it felt like, well, to me, it felt like they were like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy, that did well. Let's just make Guardians of the Galaxy, but it'll be Star Trek. Because like they had like, you know, an old like a Rocky song playing, and it was kind of wacky, and you know, crazy stuff was happening, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. But now that the movie's come out, yeah, my favorite Star Trek of the recent movies, and possibly the best Star Trek
Hmm.
movie in general. And the reason why I say that, even though that might sound a bit crazy, is because, to be honest, a lot of the Star Trek movies just aren't super great. Like, even as someone who loves Star Trek, like, to be honest, most of the movies are just kind of
Hmm.
eh. But anyway, Star Trek Beyond, 2 thumbs up. Highly recommend. I'm going to stop talking about Star Trek now because I could talk about it for hours, but Paul has to go because he probably has to do things tomorrow, as opposed to me. I'm a bum, so I don't really have to do anything tomorrow until Monday, and then I have to go
Yes,
to work. But
indeed.
yeah.
I'd do things going downtown Chicago. It'd be fun.
Oh, fun, fun, fun. Except for
Yes.
the traffic. You will probably encounter more traffic than the cities portrayed
Yes.
by Jason Bourne.
Indeed.
uh, all right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. I suppose this literally is going to be. We just technically recorded 2 episodes,
Awesome.
Paul.
Woohoo.
Congratulations.
Two stones with one bird.
So
I mean,
yeah,
two stones and
yeah,
two birds. Oh, well,
whatever. Um, so we did it, which is good because I might not be able to record
oh
next
wow.
week,
All right.
but we'll see. All right. So thank you for listening, everybody. You can follow us on Shouting at Screens on Facebook or at Shouting Screens on Twitter, and look us up on YouTube if you prefer to watch there. You can also listen to us on SoundCloud if you prefer to listen on SoundCloud instead of downloading on iTunes or one of the many podcast apps that are available. I have been Paul Hein, and
I have been Paul Kaufman.
Yes, thank you, Paul. And thank you for listening to episodes 4 and 5 of Shouting at Screens.